Hi everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be episode 3 of letting a random wheel select what movies I watch. So there will be 3 movies in this video and the random wheel will select which movies they are. I'm currently house sitting and I think this is a fun video to film while house sitting because I watch so many movies while I'm house sitting. So in case you haven't been following along with the previous 2 episodes in this series, currently the random name selector, it's called a random name selector, but it's like a random wheel with all the movie names in it. Currently, it has everything that I haven't seen yet that is on my HBO Max watch list. I'm planning probably the next time that I house sit to probably like add another streaming service in there so that it isn't just HBO Max, but I'm just doing HBO Max for right now. So let's take the wheel and see what we get for the next movie. Okay, the thing about Man of Steel is that I may have watched this before, but I don't think I've watched it all the way through. I think this was the kind of thing that like my family tried to watch it and then I ended up falling asleep. So it says a lot already about what I'm gonna think about this movie. Because growing up, there was always like these movies that we put on for like family movie night, and I feel like sometimes I would just fall asleep during those movies. Just being honest, I did it with like The Martian, and I'm pretty sure I did it with Man of Steel. If I didn't do it with Man of Steel, then it probably must have been like my dad was watching it and I like popped in the room occasionally to see what he was watching, but it's nothing that I watched all the way through. I gave a Zack Snyder film 4 stars and actually enjoyed it. What in the world? So this was my 4th Zack Snyder film, and I have not liked any of his other films. I found all of them to be extremely boring and dull. However, Man of Steel was actually a pretty good movie, and I figured out how I'd seen it before, like the bits and pieces I'd seen. It looks like I watched up through the end of the bus sequence in the film. I fell asleep, I woke up briefly and saw Zod and Cal together, fell back asleep. So basically, this was a new experience for me. I think there was 2 reasons why this film works so well for me. I think this version of Lois Lane is really strong and independent and just really well done, and I loved her introduction scene with Superman, and I love everything about that, and I love how this story wouldn't be possible and be the same without her, because she is, I feel like, the main reason why Superman is able to win. But I also feel like because we're seeing some of Superman's like species, we get to like compare and contrast how he is so different from his species because he has humanity in him. So yeah, I think that worked really well for me. I was a little bored at first, not gonna lie. I didn't really get interested in the movie until he got down to Earth, and then I got a little confused in that final battle, but it's fine. It's fine. I still enjoyed it overall. I'm honestly like so happy with this film, and I'm so confused how we went from this amazing of a DC film to what we currently have. How did we go downhill so fast? Because the current DC movies, I mean besides the new Suicide Squad movie, are just a mess. And how did we go from this amazing of a film to the universe that we have now that is basically not going to be happening anymore? And honestly, I feel like the other movies that Henry Cavill's Superman was in just don't capture his Superman very well, because I normally don't like Superman, but I really liked this version of Superman, and I feel like just Batman versus Superman and the 2 versions of Justice League that we have really don't capture why I like his character, because I feel like a lot of times I don't like Superman. I felt like I was going to be biased with this movie because I'm not the biggest Superman fan, but I feel like this performance of Superman really resonated with me. Yeah, I feel like there isn't really that much more to say. I understand why everyone loves Man of Steel. I really like it. I honestly will be thinking about this film for such a long time because it is just such a great film, and obviously I had a couple issues with it. There's a reason I'm not giving it 5 stars. However, I still really enjoy it. I think it's a solid film. Now, I'm also trying to film this quickly because low storage space on my phone, but I did delete a bunch of stuff on my phone overnight, so progress there. I am gonna pull out my laptop and we're gonna see what the second movie for this episode of the series is, and hopefully it's another one that I enjoy. I would love it if it's something as amazing as Man of Steel, if not better, because there's obviously better movies out there, because there's tons of movies I've given 5 stars. However, I still do really like Man of Steel, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, so let's pull out the random wheel. I'm really hoping for a movie that's under 2 hours because I feel like I haven't been getting much done recently and it would be nice to have like extra time tomorrow to get things done. But without further ado, let's pull this up and see what movie I'm about to get. Oh, wait, I need to turn up the volume. It almost got Dr. Sleep. There's like 2 horror movies on this random wheel that I am so terrified of getting, but I also want to watch it because I like the cast. Okay, so I got The Wind Rises. Is this another Ghibli film? Yes, it's another Ghibli film. It's over 2 hours. I didn't get my wish to get a film under 2 hours, but that's fine. The last Ghibli film I watched was only yesterday, and that one was like really slow and had like no plot. So I'm hoping that this one will go better. The synopsis on Google says a lifelong love of flight inspires Japanese aviation engineer Jiro Horikoshi, whose storied career includes the creation of the A-6M World War II fighter plane. Oh, is this nonfiction? This might be nonfiction. Is it? I don't know, I'm gonna have to do more research. It sounds like this might be nonfiction. The plot doesn't sound very intriguing to me. However, I think this could be a worthwhile story. It sounds like this is Hayao Miyazaki's last film. Not 100% sure. Let's look at the cast because I love looking at Ghibli cast. Here's all the famous people in this cast. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, John Krasinski, Emily Blunt. Oh, they are both in there, the couple. Martin Short, Stanley Tucci, love Stanley Tucci. Mae Whitman, also love Mae Whitman. Darren Criss, Elijah Wood. Dang, this cast is stacked. Some of these other ones, they look familiar, but I can't place them, some of these other actors. So, really famous cast. I'm gonna go into this one with an open mind because I think it could be good. Just, the summary isn't capturing my attention right now. So, I'll see all of you in the next clip for the second movie in this episode where I will be watching The Wind Rises, and hopefully I will have good things to report. I literally went to go put on a tiny bit of makeup and my brain started to do a depression spiral, like completely unrelated to the film that I watched. I didn't spiral throughout any of the film, so I'm like really frustrated with my brain right now, but I'm gonna try my best to talk about The Wind Rises, the film I just watched, and hopefully by talking about it, it can distract my brain and get my brain to calm down. Gotta love depression. It's really hard to film in the middle of a spiral. I've never really done this before. Like the amount of time I've just spent like staring and like not mentally being there. Okay, so The Wind Rises is a Hayao Miyazaki Studio Ghibli film, and it's about this guy who was an aeronautical engineer, I think is what it's called, where you work on planes, and he was an aeronautical engineer at, well, he started like slightly before World War II, and he designed in particular one plane that really like had an impact in World War II. But this film is sort of disjointed, and that was one of my big problems with the film. This is why I can't say that I like truly enjoyed the film. It was more just like an okay film. The film felt really disjointed because it kept leaping from scene to scene without smooth transitions between the scenes. So sometimes it would leap to a different scene. I'm like, how do we get here? How is this connected? Like when it started in the romance portion, I was like, how is this literally connected to airplanes? Like, what happened to the plot here? And I think the romance could have and should have been blended in better with the film. However, the romance was really sweet and adorable, and I really liked getting to see that. It was really heartbreaking too, but I really did enjoy seeing the romance in this film. I also really liked the main character Jiro as a character. I found that I loved how he is so mathematically and engineer-y, like smart, but he's also a dreamer and his head is in the clouds a lot, and I liked that combination for him, and I think it worked really well for him. I think there was a lot of beautiful sequences in this film as well. I think it was a very beautiful film. However, that comes into play with part of the problem. So first of all, just want to, before I go into this next little rant or discussion, I want to say that this film did suffer from slow pacing, as most Studio Ghibli films did. So there were several points where I like completely, my brain was elsewhere, and I had to be like, no, you're watching a film, focus. I honestly think every single Studio Ghibli film I've seen, even my 2 favorite Studio Ghibli films, did have at least one moment where my brain was like totally not there because I got bored. Love that. But anyways, the thing about it being beautiful and the problem with that is, and I had to look up some history when I was watching this movie because I was watching this film going, okay, so he's designing planes that are being used in World War II to kill people, and they're being used as fighter planes. So my brain was like, remind me again of Japan's involvement in the war and the type of war crimes they committed and stuff. So it's like Japan, like the army in particular, committed some really horrific war crimes and war atrocities. And this movie, it didn't romanticize those atrocities to an extent, but it romanticized the people who were creating the weapons to commit the atrocity. So I feel like this movie needed more of a blend of, yes, here's what happened, and also here's the terrible stuff that's going on with like the war crimes that were committed by Japan. I'm trying to think of a good example of this when it was done well. I think All the Light We Cannot See is a good example because it follows two characters, and one of the characters is like a Nazi soldier. And you see him and you sort of like root for him in some respects, but even though he's a good, interesting character to read about, here's all the atrocities that Germany is committing. So like that's a blend of like, we can be like, wow, this character is pretty cool, these are cool things happening, the process behind like creating these plans is incredible, but also we need to address the realities and the horrors of the war, you know? And I feel like we didn't get that with this film. And when I was looking at the reviews for this film, a lot of people were like praising this film because this does seem like Hayao Miyazaki's like passion project because he's really into planes, but other people were also like, no, we need to address the realities of this war and how many people were impacted by this war. So I ended up giving this film 2.5 stars. I was like, how do I show 2.5 stars with my fingers? 2.5. That's the closest I can get right now. So it was so close to being a film that I would enjoy. I think it just needed the scenes to be like connected smoother. It needed the romance to be connected more into like the plain stuff smoother. And I also think, again, pacing could have been better. And again, it could have also addressed the realities of the war a little better. So I would say this one is just okay. I don't dislike it. I don't like it. I think it's an interesting film with some good stuff going for it, but it didn't live up to its full potential. So that's my thoughts on this film, and yeah, let me pull out my laptop to get the random wheel out to get the final movie that I'm going to be watching for this episode and for this house sitting gig, because my house sitting gig ends very soon. I have one more night after this night here to watch a film, so I'm gonna do that. I'm hoping for a short film, who knows what I'll get. Also, I'm really hoping to get a film that isn't a Studio Ghibli film because Studio Ghibli films are really slow and I just want a faster paced movie right now, and I feel like I've watched so many Studio Ghibli films during this house sitting gig. So we have the wheel pulled up and we're gonna spin it. Also, it'd be nice if I didn't get another DC film. Who knows? I got a Studio Ghibli film. This one better be faster paced. I would say that the one the pacing works best for me is Howl's Moving Castle, and that is honestly my favorite, and mostly because of Howl. I love Howl as a character. But even in that, there was like slow scenes, and I want a little more faster pacing. So this is the most recent Studio Ghibli film. Oh shoot, it's also 2 hours 4 minutes, so that's sort of long in my opinion. In my opinion, anything under 2 hours is like short and like a pretty good length, but anything over 2 hours is a bit long. Let's read what this one says. Mahito, a young 12-year-old boy, struggles to settle in a new town after his mother's death. However, when a talking heron informs Mahito that his mother is still alive, he enters an abandoned tower in search of her, which takes him to another world. Okay, so we see some fantasy elements, so that could be fun. But Studio Ghibli, so I feel like it's gonna be a little slow. Well, let's look at the cast. I already know one cast member. I know Robert Pattinson is in here. He's one of my favorite actors. I think he's incredible, and I've heard fantastic things about his performance in this film, especially that he like really embodied the character so much so that a lot of people didn't recognize which character he played until like they looked it up after the fact. So there's Christian Bale, solid. Dave Bautista, solid. Gemma Chan, Willem Dafoe, Karen Fukuhara, Mark Hamill, love that. Robert Pattinson, as I said. Florence Pugh, also love that. Dan Stevens, and yeah, so those are the ones that I recognize as famous people in this film. So hopefully The Boy and the Heron can be a good film. I have not the highest expectations for it pacing wise, but hopefully the rest of the film can make up for the fact that it will probably be slow paced. I watched The Boy and the Heron, and honestly I'm starting to wonder if Studio Ghibli films aren't generally films for me, but just that there's rare exceptions. Like literally all of the Studio Ghibli films that I saw when I was like a teen was like maybe 4 of them. There was like Nausicaa, Princess Mononoke, Ponyo, and Castle in the Sky. Those were like when I was a teen and a kid. I liked those. My finger's brown from eyeshadow, okay? That's why my finger is brown. Didn't want all of you startled there. And like, there's a few that I've watched as an adult that I like, but I feel like the vast majority that I've watched as an adult I don't like, and The Boy and the Heron is no exception. So I ended up giving The Boy and the Heron 2 stars. So the first like third of the film, I thought it was going to be something like deep about grief, and reading online I guess it is somewhat deep about grief, but I need to like look into that more because a lot of it went over my head. But the first part of the film is like the boy trying to figure out like, oh, why is this heron bugging here, and he has this like death of his mother that's like hanging over his head. But then the tone drastically shifts for the final 2/3 of the movie, and it becomes sort of like an Alice in Wonderland type vibe. And I'm honestly really not into Alice in Wonderland stories now. As I've become older, I've wanted more concrete answers for why things happen the way that they happen, and Alice in Wonderland is sort of just like, oh, let's throw this fantasy randomness in your face with no explanation, and nothing entirely makes sense and nothing is connected, and you'll jump from one scene randomly to the next scene. And that's sort of what it felt like for the final 2/3 of this movie. Now the voice acting in this one is incredible. Robert Pattinson does so incredible to the point where you will not even be able to recognize who he is in the film unless you look up who he is. I do have to say it was a little bit of a shock to me. I thought this movie was going to be this like boy and this beautiful heron, and the heron turns out to be this like ugly freaking creature. Like what? I wanted that beautiful heron to be the boy's friend and to be on this adventure with him, and instead we got that ugly thing. I do really like Lady Hime as a character. I would say that a lot of the other characters I'm not super passionate about and I care about a ton. I feel like Lady Hime is the only one that I'm really like, you go girl, I love her. I think the soundtrack for this one was great. I think the pacing struggled a bit, as most Studio Ghibli films do, which is a common theme. When you hear me talking about Studio Ghibli, you know that I'm going to be talking about pacing. But yeah, I just wasn't a super huge fan of this film. Like, I can understand why some people would really like it, especially if you're really good at understanding deeper meanings in movies and stuff, but it's not for me. So those were the 3 movies that I watched for this video. I just yawned and it literally looks like I was crying. I love that. Maybe that's a sign that I need more sleep. So the first movie I watched was Man of Steel. I gave that 4 stars, and then I watched The Wind Rises, which I gave 2.5 stars, and I ended it with The Boy and the Heron, which I gave 2 stars. So 1 film that I liked and 2 that I wasn't a huge fan of. So that was all for this episode. I hope all of you enjoyed watching it. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. I am going to be adding more than just HBO Max onto my random wheel. For my next episodes for the series, I'm thinking about adding Apple TV, which there isn't really that many movies that I want to watch there. I was thinking about adding Apple TV movies on there, Prime Video movies. I think there was one more that I was looking at too. Oh, Peacock movies. Yeah, so those are the ones I'm thinking of adding next. The ones that I add on the wheel, honestly, depend a lot upon like the house that I'm house sitting at. So yeah, I hope all of you stick around for more episodes in this series. I think this series is really fun because I love randomized things where I don't have to make decisions for myself. You know, that's why I'm so obsessed with mystery figures. That's why, to some extent, I like claw machines. Because, like, am I going to win it? Am I not going to win it? I don't know. It's going to be a little random because sometimes claw machines are a little rigged. So, yeah, I just love mystery and not making decisions for myself. So the previous 2 episodes in this series will be linked down in the description below. They'll be linked in a little playlist. If you want to stay up to date with the movies that I'm watching, then head on over to my Letterboxd. I generally don't really do that many reviews. I more just do star ratings. But yeah, I hope all of you are having a great month, and I'll see all of you in my next video. Until next time, goodbye.